Well, I'm not sure what to call this rant. I think it's 9.0 at this point. Um, I've been posting on Instagram some little tidbits of training, and with the idea that really what I'm trying to do is provide some of my former students with some little tiny um, piece of information that would help them remember some of the stuff that we worked on in past sessions. And I got into a couple online conversations that people were asking me questions on certain developmental concerns. And so there's a couple of things that I have. I guess one of my problems that I have is how does one really define proper training? Or better yet, how does one even approach or find a master teacher? How do you define a master teacher? How do you define someone that has the knowledge and experience to really break down all of the problems that a player might have and put together in a chronological sequence of how to perfect each one of those things? And so one of the discussions that I had with a friend of mine is we opened up a discussion that was based on so how many pro players have taken and developed only their career using Facebook, Instagram, or other social media apps to really build their skill base? And I'm going to say zero. So if when I talk to an average, like an average NHL player or an NCAA player, for example, the money that they spent over the career on good teachers really are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so if you're on Instagram and you're on Facebook and you think that you're going to get really, really expert instruction, I think you're missing the point. So, for example, I just completed my 50th year of teaching. So this right here, right up here, that's 1973 is my very first team I started coaching. And unfortunately, I've been going nonstop ever since. And why? This is such a crazy sport. I call it the love of kids, I guess. So trying to help them get better. And I was a young boy with a dream, so trying to help it. But when I look at all of the companies I founded and all the research I've done and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours and then worked on my bachelor degree and then my master's science degree and then I just finished a 9-year study a while ago toward a PhD, which I'm still hoping to finish. But thousands of hours, and so I try to charge people for time, but you'd have to ask the pros that I've coached. Like I'm what we call an expert teacher. So what would you pay? So there's teachers out here that charge $100, $200, $300, $400, $600 an hour. So let me get this right. So let's say I put together a series of instructional videos that I would guarantee you that if you followed and you would just go A, B, C, or 1.0, 1.0, 1.2, 1.3, and you follow up and you covered all the stick handling, skating fundamentals, and really broke it all down for you. What do you think that video series would be worth? Now, if it took an NHL player, say $200,000 in development, countless hours, he pays a private coach $250, $500 an hour, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. What do you really think would be a fair price? Now everybody goes, and I've had this conversation. It's like, well, I think if you average, because I think people out there are willing to pay like $5 for a video. I go, okay, well, $5. Okay, so let's say I bring a player in here into this area and I teach them. I charge an X rate for one person, two people, three people, and so I'm sitting there going, well, I cover in that session maybe 2 teaching points. So if I was to bring somebody in here and say, okay, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to charge you $10 to come in here, $10 per hour. Do you think that that's reasonable? So if you're an expert teacher who has done for, let's say, I've done science research and work now for, oh my God, let's say 20, probably 35 years of science and research and studies and head coaching and all sorts of stuff in associations and developmental work and training work and all that sort of stuff. And I'm really just trying to put together something and say, what's kind of fair in the middle? So then I talked to another friend of mine who's a pro coach, and he goes, listen, he says, so what would you rather have? He said, would you rather have the person that's really serious, that understands the value of knowledge, or would you rather have somebody say, $10, that's too much? Can you spend too much for that video? $10? It's not worth it. Are you crazy? That's insane. So a funny thing happened years ago, and so a friend of mine, we had met this guy, this salesperson from this really expensive car dealership, selling Lamborghinis and Ferraris and all sorts of stuff. These are not cheap. And so they knew that I was involved with pro hockey, and I thought, what a great opportunity to kind of talk business in a weird way. Because what they're doing, you're buying a car that's worth $600,000, $1 million or whatever. So he said, let me tell you something. He said, so I'm in the sales room. And this person walks in and they sit down around this guy. I really like that car out there. It's not cheap. And he goes, so I'm just wondering, so what type of gas does it use? Does it use regular or super? And the guy goes, if you have to ask me that question, you shouldn't be buying this car. And I went, it's such a good point. So what dollar point is, so if I said to you I charged you $500 an hour, would you take my instruction serious based on my experience? So if I look at the amount of information and the people I've taught and the journey I've been through and research and companies and millions of dollars, and then I said to you, okay, well, it's going to cost you, a video series is going to cost you, let's say, I tell you what we'll do. I'm going to give you some little tidbits, maybe for $5. And then if you're a player, I'm going to give you another video series, and maybe that's going to be $100. But if you're a coach, where you have to, at the end, watch the video series and answer a bunch of questions and do some testing, I'm going to certify you that'd be $500. What do you think is fair? And this is something that just frustrates the hell out of me. So one last funny story. So this is years ago. So this is, I was down in Madison, Wisconsin. And there was a guy that was on the ice, and I don't want to say his name, but he was coaching an elite team. And he's on the ice, and he comes up and he says, you know, I play pro. I think I could have gone further, but I had some problems with my shooting. And he was in a professional occupation. He was out of hockey in the professional occupation in the medical field, and he's making a lot of money. And I said, so you're making a lot of money in your business, and because you're an expert in your field, right? And I said, okay, so what would have happened? How much would you pay if someone had walked up to you and said, just when you're at that critical phase in your development, said to you, hey, if you could fix this for me, I think I'm going to stay in the NHL for 5 to 10 years. What would you pay for that? He goes, I don't know, probably a lot, I guess. Well, what happens? They said, so what's your problem? And he explained to me. So I said, well, skate around, and I'll take a look at you. So he skates around, he comes back, and I said, okay, so now, based on that now, what do you think, if I could give you the answer in 2 to 3 minutes on what your problem is, what do you think that'd be worth for that instruction? Do you think that'd be worth 5 years of an NHL contract at maybe 1%? Maybe would that be worth $5,000, $10,000? What would that be worth to you right now if I could come up with exactly the problem? That's a good question. I don't know, maybe $500, I guess, $1,000. I said, really? You, if I had given you the answer, you'd be in the NHL for 5 years making $3 million or $2 million, where it is per year. And so that would have been $12 million. So take 1% of that. What's that? And really, and you're going to pay me $500, $1,000? Okay, but anyway, I'm going to give it to you for free. But I just make a point because you're an expert and you charge, because you bring people in, you charge X amount of dollars for service, and you have an answer for them. They pay you for that, right? Because you're a medical professional. And I told him what it was, and he goes, oh my God. So he skates around and he's just ripping pucks and doing these cuts back. His son was on the ice and he goes, you've created a monster. Look at my. And all he's doing is skating around and shooting. He goes, oh my God, what a difference. I can't believe it. I said, okay, so coming back to that level. So I do get calls from NHL players. So they'll call me and say, I have an issue. And it seems in this game situation I have a problem, and I have to give them an answer. And then I get a call from a professional coach that'll go, I have a problem with the skating, with the player skating. Could you look at it for me? And I have all these things to fix. Okay, and it should take 5 to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. What is that worth if you have expert knowledge? So here's my last question for you. How do you define expert knowledge? So again, I'm going to throw something at you just out of curiosity, just to have some fun. So I get a call several years back from the Chinese Olympic program. And they offer me a contract to go over and help train over there for the Olympics. And I said, okay, well, first of all, I'm going to ask you a question. First of all, you're quantifying me in this conversation, correct? That I should know what I'm talking about. Said, well, yes. And I said, okay, so I'm just going to ask you, could you give me a layout of what the contract is? So they told me it was going to be this. And I said, well, that's not really fair because I'm missing my business here, and what you're offering me really isn't what an expert would charge, because I charge more than that when I go to a pro camp. And I run a pro camp for a day, so why would I do that? That's number one. They went, okay, that's negotiable then. And I said, okay, is there any other little quirks that I should know about? They go, well, if you don't meet our expectations, then you only get 80% of that salary. So I said, okay. So who's judging me on that expectation? They go, well, our coaches. I said, okay, well, so if you're bringing me over as an expert and have unexperts quantifying me, then is that really fair? So I said, I'm going to ask you one point. So could you please, okay, so assuming I'm an expert, maybe I'm not, but could you come up with a question that could quantify me, that unequivocally you could look at me and go, that guy knows exactly what he's talking about? And they couldn't come up with a question. I said, so really you're searching around for an employee to take your teams to the Olympic program to help them perform well in the Olympics, and you don't know what questions to quantify. So what you look at is maybe this logo. Maybe I'm having a Toronto Maple Leaf man on here. Maybe I have a Montreal Canadian logo on here. So that's how you quantify, guys? I just need to know. So is it the jersey that they wear, the hat that they wear? Is it, no, this is a black hat. Is it, what is it? Like, how do you quantify it? You would assume that the best teachers in the world would rise to the highest level of competency, and I don't know if that's the case, because we talked to Brian Burke. He said, for example, he said, geez, he got frustrated. He said, that strength coaches are a dime a dozen. He said, it's, and if you ask guys in the NHL that coach, really, it's more for the expertise or the recognition of coaching at that level, not really that the money that they make. And they should be making a lot more money, I would assume. If you're taking millions of dollars in a guy's contract and making them better, I think you should get something of that. But that's time of day. So at the end of all of this, as a parent, could you come up with 5 questions? And believe me, I've had this conversation with parents. Could you come up with 5 questions that you could ask me that you would say unequivocally no, that that guy knows exactly what he's talking about? So if you go to your doctor, first of all, you look and you go, on the wall up there's certification, but there's no certification in this industry. There really is. Just that I played junior A, junior B, played midget, whatever I played. And no disrespect to those guys, because Pat Burns was a great coach. I don't think he played in the NHL. But there's some people out there have a really good understanding of the game, and they can bring it across quickly, either in a tactical sense or a skill sense. And a lot of times, our failures as coaches or players, we learn from those lessons, and those are the lessons that allow us to excel at a higher rate. So I understand all that. But so what is it? Is it, what's your experience? Well, what do you mean by my experience? So I had this question with a parent. He said, well, what's your game experience? I mean, game experience. What's it got to do with anything? Pat Burns didn't play in the NHL. Oh, okay. And by the way, the greatest offensive player in the game, questionably, obviously, is Gretzky, and he was crappy as a coach. So what does that got to do with anything? Okay, so what are the moral standards of you as a coach? Well, there's a good one, because I go in the dressing room and see kids spitting on the floor and writing on walls and shoot pucks on the walls and, urinating on toilet seats and just making a crap mess of the room. I guess that's a good standard for a coach. I mean, to let guys get away with that. Okay, so what else is going on? So really, can I quantify you as a parent? So, I can ask one question. So I'm going to quantify you as a parent because, as you say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So am I going to have to teach your kids any attitude problem? I'm just here to coach skill and game. Am I here to teach respect, discipline, work ethic, attitude, all those other things? Because if I have to do that, then you failed as a parent, because now I have to teach that, and that's a great idea. So that's why I find. So it's easier to quantify a parent than to quantify a coach, because most people don't know this game. That's why people keep going to Instagram and all these other social media platforms, because they don't really understand what they're looking for. They understand the quality of the information. And I'm horrified by what I see on there, because really a lot of times we're seeing all these bad habits, and these people are just saying these weird things like, I'm going to get one of this, going down on one knee and spinning around on one knee. Like, give me a break. It's rate of occurrence. What's it got to do with the game? Every minute that you spend doing something that has nothing to do with the game application, you're screwing up. That has never happened in a game ever, except for maybe if a guy falls on his ass and has to take a shot. And what's that, 1 in a million times? So really we have to work on all these statistical, like rate of occurrence thing, all these other things. Anyway, get off the topic. So how do you quantify and what's the worth and the value of a person as a teacher? That's the question. So, unfortunately, and I'm ready to launch kind of a video series, and I really don't know what to do, because people say, oh, you got to charge $5. And this guy says charge $100. And this guy says charge $1,000. And all I can see is maybe a 3-value system. I don't know. Your advice would help. But I'm not giving away things for nothing. And it's because it's cost me far too much. And damn it, it's kind of like the Ferrari thing. if you have to ask for a $5 benefit, then you shouldn't be buying this instructor. Anyway, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.